In this video, I'm going to talk to you about placing items in different Adobe programs and working with items between programs like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, any of your other Adobe programs. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Laney. I'm a wedding invitation designer. I love to teach people how to design invitations. If you want to take our free Illustrator course, I'll link it in the description of this video. So I often use a combo of InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop to design my wedding invitations. You can see here I've created a mock-up, and this is in Photoshop, but I've actually designed the individual files for the invitation in Illustrator. And everything I'm going to show you today will work pretty similarly in all Adobe programs. One of my favorite things about using Adobe is that all the programs talk to each other. So if you have the full Creative Cloud, I'll link a discount link for you below if you're interested, then you can really use a lot of elements kind of interchangeably, and you can use each program for what it's best for, and then they'll kind of talk to each other. So what does that actually look like? So this is my mock-up, and I have all my individual pieces, and how I've brought them into Photoshop is by placing them. So you go into place, and there's place linked or place embedded. So embedded, you're going to place it, it's going to be stuck in here, it's not connected to anything else. So we want to use place linked, and that means it will stay linked to the original file. So when I place one of these files in here, I can either place the Illustrator file by itself, or I can place any of the JPEGs that I have created. I like to use JPEGs because it gives you the white background of the paper, but you could create a white background here in Photoshop and then place the rest of the file on it. It kind of doesn't matter. So when I click on that piece, I'm going to place it here in Photoshop, and then I can do anything in Photoshop that I need to do to that piece, and it will generally remain linked to the other piece. So the way that you can tell is over here in the layers, you see that we have this little link here. And the power of this is when you go to start making revisions to this file. For instance, if we were to take this particular piece and we were to relink it to a different file, for instance, I'm going to link it to this yellow flower instead. And then you can either just save the file, or what I'm going to do is export JPEGs. Again, it says it's going to replace all the JPEGs that already exist. So then when I go over here, you see I'm spinning and everything updates automatically with all the new revisions. I made a couple small changes to this file and you saw that come up here. So it takes a minute to get everything settled here in Photoshop in your mockup, but then once you start making revisions to your files in Illustrator, all the links will update and all those revisions will kind of come over here automatically. If for some reason they don't automatically come over, you can right click and click update modify content. These are already updated, so we don't need to do that anymore. What's also great about placing is if you have something like this mockup where you are regularly needing to change it to something different, you can very easily do that with links too. So this is the envelope liner. We will click relink to file, and then I'll choose an envelope liner from someone else's suite. This happens to be the same design, so it's the same as the original one. And now I've included it in here. We could do the same with relinking this to a new wedding invitation. So it's really easy to change from one client's mockup to another. We just relink all those files to the new versions, and we don't have to change the sizing, the shadowing, the placement, any of the additional work that we've done here in Photoshop. So then how does it work the other way? Now in this file, I've got this yellow Aztec Dahlia and I have it placed. So you'll go into File Place. You can only place files linked in Illustrator, but you can embed them if you need to afterward. The main difference is that this is pointing, instead of putting the picture of the flower in here, it's saying pull from this other file. So whatever's in that other file will pull here. If you sent this to someone who didn't have that other file, it would be a broken link. So in that case, you would want to embed this, or you can use packaging it when you're saving your files if you know about packaging in Illustrator. But kind of the simplest way is just to actually embed the image. So the picture of the flower is actually in this file as opposed to just drawing from another Photoshop file. So then if we were to want to change this in some way, you can't really change watercolor elements in Illustrator. We would need to do that in Photoshop. So let's make a change that's obvious. I'm going to do a hue saturation adjustment. This is a common change that I do. I have a whole other video on it, but it'll help you change the colors of watercolors without it looking too wonky. So let's change this flower from yellow to this pink color. And then all I really have to do is just go in and save this file. Now it's saved. When I go back into Illustrator, it's going to give me that message. Some files are missing or modified. Would you like to update them? Click yes. And now we've updated that file to the new version. So when you are linking things between different Adobe programs, if you make a change in one, it's automatically going to change everything in the other. And then once we update, we export the JPEGs here from Illustrator again, and it's replacing that original JPEG file. Then we go back into our mockup and we're actually going to see that update come through here. And if we had placed the Adobe Illustrator file instead of the JPEG, it would have saved here, then updated here, and then gone back and updated over here. So kind of everywhere that that file is pulling from is going to continue to update. So I think that's really helpful because when we go in and make a change to original element, you know it's going to update on all the different places that you've used it. If we toss this into InDesign or even like Premiere Pro and some of those programs, it's going to update there as well. So I love using the Adobe programs because they talk to each other and don't require me to do any, I don't have to update this flower in my Illustrator file just because I changed the color. It's automatically going to do that for me. And then if I make any changes on this invitation or something, it's all going to automatically update on that mockup really easily as well. And just to reiterate, this is pointing to a file called aztec.example.psd. And if I send this Illustrator file to someone who doesn't have that aztec.example PSD file, then they will get something saying that the link is broken and it will probably be blurry or it won't even show up at all because their computer isn't linking to anywhere. It's pulling from a file that doesn't exist. If I were to move this file to a new location on my computer, then the next time I open this file, it might say, hey, your link is missing, help me locate it, and I would have to select the folder that I moved it to as well. So that's the main concern when you're placing files in a linked way, is just if you move things around or if you send it to someone who doesn't have that linked file, they might get an error there. But as long as you keep things generally in the same place, that's why I always like to put things where they're going to live forever or put them all in the same folder for the same project. Then when you update them in Photoshop, they will automatically pull into Illustrator and also vice versa. I hope this helped explain how the different Adobe programs can work together. I think it's one of the most powerful and often overlooked features. So if you are new to Adobe, I would definitely recommend our free Adobe Illustrator course. And I teach a lot of people how to design wedding invitations and all kinds of graphic design tips here on my channel. So I hope you'll stick around. Thanks, everyone.